And there's growing concern that members of the Afghan security forces are switching sides to join the Taliban. Reports suggest that scores of Afghans trained by NATO in counterinsurgency have gone over to the Taliban in the last 2 months. They're changing sides because of what they call the anti-Muslim behavior of the international troops. To talk more, I'm joined by our military analyst, Afghani Khrushchev. Hello, Afghani. Thanks for joining us. So, what actually makes the trainees desert?
There are several reasons for them. Most important is what's the key of their motivation. There could be ideological, psychological, cultural, or economic. As it turned out, there are two major factors why there is a growing desertion. The first of all, it's a cultural issue, because in Afghanistan, in Afghanistan history, loyalty is a currency. It's a very fluid. It's a very fluid substance, so you cannot count on the long-term loyalty if you haven't committed yourself, and if you demonstrate any sign of treating them as inferior, then it will backfire sooner or later. That's one of the reasons. The cultural thing. Second, economical, because the Taliban can compete effectively, money-wise, with the ISAF in Afghanistan. And the third most important, the Afghans do not believe that they're fighting for their own future, because for them, those who desert or who are considering it, for them it's still a proxy war for their other interests.
Okay, let's get to the state of affairs in Afghanistan. As far as I know, you served in Afghanistan and trained Afghan troops 20 years ago. What's the difference between the situation now and back 20 years ago?
There are fundamental differences. First of all, the Soviet Union has committed long-term and invested big time in the special program to train the trainers. We train Afghan officers. We screen the Afghan officers for the training program, and we conducted the special selection and training program in Lvov Military Political Academy. And we were training them in Ukraine as a part of the Soviet Union, and we trained them in their own native language. Our team was the first of the Soviet military officers who were conducting the training program in their own language, in Dari, in civilian subject, and all the military language in Afghanistan is in Pashto, whether they are Farsi speaking or Dari speaking. So we have a specialized program. And second thing, we lived together. So for Afghan officers, it was in a sort of cultural immersion program, both in a way of thinking and operating, and so we were living together with Afghan officers and with the Cuban officers on the same floor in Lvov Military Academy. So there was no the cultural differences, if it was so minimized. So when later they were sent back to Afghanistan, we already had our own human network to rely upon when we ourselves came back to Afghanistan. And that's the most important thing. When the Soviet Union has left, that was the most positive legacy of the Soviet long-term commitment. Even now, 2 years ago, when I came back from Afghanistan again in a different capacity, what is really surprising that almost all top-level Afghan officers still have a Soviet military background.
Well, thank you very much, Evgeny, for your analysis. That was RT's Afghani Khrushchev.